think for Sindarov, the fact that it is no increment helps. It randomizes things slightly. In the meantime, we see Hikaru with the white pieces start with the Spanish exchange, trading off a bishop for knight very early. This has been employed by some top grandmasters, Bobby Fischer occasionally, but this is a provocative pin, Tanya, that Sindarov has employed. He's actually sacrificing a pawn. If Hikaru wants to push a pawn in front of his own king, he doesn't. If he'd pushed the g-pawn, he could have won a pawn in the center.
And I think the Hikaru from 10 years ago would have done that at a blink of an eye. That was his trademark. That was the brand of chess that Hikaru Nakamura got. But in the recent years, we've seen him take a more universal approach, a more strategic fight, getting those positional battles in. I like that he did barely take any time to make that decision, because that is absolutely key in this format. You know, you can't burn the clock deciding, do I play tactical? Do I keep it positional? He said, safety first.
Safety first, Hikaru brings out a knight. Knights supporting each other now. This is not the deadliest of pins, but it looks like a very steady start to the game. This opening, the Spanish exchange, can either lead to very direct play or very slow, cagey maneuvering play. It looks like the latter on this occasion, and that was the choice of Hikaru Nakamura.
Do we find that surprising that Hikaru has chosen to do this with the white pieces? Did we expect him to maybe, I don't know, like try something a little bit more provocative in game number one?
I think he's playing the player as well, right? He knows that Sindarov is fearless. He will take those complications. He will take that bait. He will bring the fight if he has to. So for Hikaru, he believes this is sort of that anti-young player chess that he wants to get on the board. Once again, leaving those critical decisions, those perhaps chaotic positions for later on when Sindarov might not have enough time to make the precise choices.
I've heard of the openings like the anti-martial. I've never heard the anti-youngin, but it looks like that might be what we're employing here. Are we in consensus that that's probably what Hikaru is doing? Is it possible perhaps that he can tempt Javakir into some sort of overextension if he just plays slow, calm, methodical chess?
I think that's the plan for Hikaru. He's kind of, sometimes there's this misconception he's still branded as this attacking player, but that's very much Hikaru from 10, 15 years ago. These days, he's a bit of a strategist. He's very slow, very measured with his approach. He wants to minimize risk, and if he gets a chance, he'll jump on it, of course. But he's hoping that maybe Sindarov pushes too many pawns forward, leaves too many holes for the white knights to jump into. Still early days here, though, of course.
When we speak of Hikaru, the two biggest strengths that come to my mind are his tactical speed, the pace on the clock, more than the pace on the board.
For sure.
And the second is just his resourcefulness, just incredible resilience on the board. So the long fights do suit Nakamura in this battle of experience versus ambition. And to your point, you know, the anti-young player chess, a term coined by none other than the world #1, Hikaru's good friend Magnus Carlsen.
Yes, exactly. And I think you bring up a really good point there, Tanya, in that maybe Magnus has a great reputation at being able to, you know, grind any player down. You can also maybe think of some people that have written books on the topic. But at the same time, people might forget, well, actually, Hikaru is basically as good at doing exactly the same thing. There's a reason why he's been at the sharp end of the chess world for so long.
Yeah, he's been learning from all of his great rivals. Hikaru Nakamura, he's fought the likes of Vishy Anand, Kramnik, Carlsen, and others, and he's learned from all of them. He's definitely tried to replicate Magnus's kind of grinding technique to an extent, especially in these blitz games, rapid games, where he has the speed to kind of tire his opponents out and change the pace later. There was a bit of a frown on Hikaru's face. I think he was wondering whether he could break the pin of that black light squared bishop on the edge of the board, but ultimately, again, very modest play from Hikaru, but very quick play. That's the key.
Well, he is trying to make it fun on that left flank. This last move does hint at the b-pawn moving 2 steps forward and creating some tension, which now has been stopped by Javakir Sindarov, so making sure that Hikaru doesn't get the b4 plan in. The first imbalances are already there, right? Black does have the bishop pair. Javakir Sindarov with that long-term gain, but the dark squared bishop, what bishop am I talking about? That looks like a big pawn on the board, sort of blocked with its own army. But eventually, one of the pawns moving forward will open up the diagonal. I'll also point out a weakness in Hikaru's camp, the d3 pawn, something to always think about with the queen and the rook potentially lining up on the d file for Javakir.
So are we saying then that the d3 pawn, the weakness for white here, potentially you've got Javakir saying, well, look, my dark squared bishop is sat behind a couple of pawns, and that's because if you ever choose to push this, you're unleashing my minor pieces and allowing me very naturally to get my pieces onto better squares, Therefore, I'm sort of paralyzing you and not letting you do anything with your position. Is that the idea here?
Yeah, it's kind of a balancing act, normally against a bishop pair. So for Hikaru Nakamura here, you want to accelerate the play before the bishops are able to exert influence. But this dark square bishop of blacks, of Sindarov's that we talked about, is a bit of a dead piece. So blowing open the center might actually backfire for Hikaru Nakamura. I'm more expecting here that he continues developing his pieces. The white queen will step forward, connecting the white rooks. The white rooks will centralize, the white knights will improve, and only when he's fully ready will he press that button and say, let's go for it.
And potentially, speaking of let's go for it, one of the plans that Javakir has in mind in return for that, and wow, before any of that happens, he goes for the idea, John, that you earlier pointed out, d4, but again, you're opening up the diagonals, you're opening up the lines for your opponent's bishops. This is a double-edged sword.
Maybe that's why Hikaru kind of did the head bob. He's like side to side. Well, it's not great, but it's not that bad either. Ultimately, the Black King hasn't yet castled. I think that was the kind of trigger for him. He thought the Black King in the middle, let's try and go for it. And Sindarov here has to decide himself whether to trade off pawns, allowing the White Queen into the center, or whether to get the King castled as soon as possible. I quite like it actually from Hikaru.
Now, if Black takes the pawn here, of course, White can take back with a knight, a bishop, or a queen. Positionally, what are we looking at in the short to medium term here for White?
I actually like all three options, and
Okay.
I would be very tempted to even get my knight into the game, into the center of the board. The bishop has its own pros. You might be looking at the e-pawn moving forward next, and David's point of getting the queen centralized. I think it's a problem of plenty with all the moves. You know, chess is a complex game with different approaches. If I had to make a pick, I would probably go with queen takes pawn. Centralize the queen, get the rook onto the open D line next.
All right, one more positional question while I have the chance, because they're going to speed up soon, I'm sure. The knight on f1, where's that going? While the bishop was out there, I was thinking maybe the knight would end up on g3. Now I'm not so sure.
Yeah, it's unclear. Maybe the knight will jump now. There's a chance it might get chopped off within a couple of moves by the black dark squared bishop if it jumps forward to g3. The end goal is that f5 square, the square we talked about earlier in the day that Anish Giri landed a knight. Not to great effect, but here we go. Because he has more knights than the opponent, he tries to block the center. Knights preferred block positions. Bishops struggle slightly. Very logical move there from Hikaru Nakamura. And Sindarov eventually does get his king to safety, and the knight does leap forward.
And it's not going to stop there, right? It is coming on that f5 square. Now, again, if you're the side with the bishop pair, you want to open up that center, which has just been closed. So c6 is the idea that black wants, which is why the rook was lined up by Javakir behind the c-pawn. He's just calculating if this is the moment that he strikes at the center with c6.
Now, if I'm thinking about ways to push buttons, provoke the chaos, and all this kind of thing, I'm looking for ways to burst the position open as white or black. Are there things like, for black, bringing the knight forward to f4 and pushing g5? Like, do any of these ideas sort of hold water? Are we worried about pawn pushes on the king side for white or black?
Yeah, I would say that maybe pushing the black pawns in front of the black king could backfire, since the white knights are poised. They're great defenders for now, but could also leap forward. I quite liked your knight to f4 move for black on the previous turn, but now that he's started retreating Sindarov, the black dark squared bishop going back, maybe a bit less support for that idea. It feels like Hikaru now trying to gravitate his knights towards the other side, the queen side, where he does have a bit more space. White has the most advanced pawn of them all on d5. It feels like that's the side he's playing on.
Well, black can return the favor and get a very advanced pawn on that a-pawn moving forward. One pawn clamping down two of white's pawn. a4 is a move on black's radar. Now, this last move that Hikaru's played, one idea that's off the card for Sindarov was the c6 plan, because that would create a lot of dark squared weaknesses where that white knight was beautifully planted to head towards that c4 square. So Sindarov first falls back with a queen, a sort of a prophylactic move, making sure that you don't land in any sort of forks once the knight starts jumping forward.
Yeah, a lot of retreating moves, though, from Sindarov. He just brought his dark squared bishop back home, bringing his queen now to the back rank. Does feel like a step in the wrong direction. He's also a minute and a half almost down on the clock. So we will see what kind of action Hikaru can go for. He's the king of changing the pace. It looks like he's just maneuvering for so long, doing nothing, and then suddenly he'll go on the attack.
Speaking of changing the pace, I've been quietly noting the heart rates since the start of the game, and Sindarov has had his heart rate, it more or less went up to 130, 140 straight away, and it's kind of stayed there. And Hikaru sort of started, it took until the end of the opening for it to reach 100 BPM. It sort of went up to 120 briefly, and it looks like it's ramping up as the game progresses. Very fascinating.
And it's been, it's been a sort of a storyline in this game. It felt like Sindarov did everything right out of the opening, but the last two moves, what have they been? The bishop comes back next to the king, then the queen falls back with the bishop. And you start feeling that the momentum of the game is shifting as well. Hikaru now offers a trade, and the idea is that that would allow the rook to a square if that bishop capture is accepted, and a doubling up on that C line, the queen following up, potentially the rook following up, and really tripling down on the C7 weakness. Queen C2, rook C1 on the cards.
Yeah, but the knight move that was prophesied by John here has landed. A knight fork is in the air. The black knight is aiming to jump even further onto the D3 square, hitting both white rooks. That has to be guarded. I like your move there, Tanya, guarding D3 with the white queen, queen C2, hitting black pawns as well. Instead, he improves his knight, Hikaru Nakamura. Visually, it just looks so nice for white. Black needs a bit more activity, some backup for his lonely knight there on F4.
The problem is the light squad bishop that Javakir has here. It doesn't have any good active diagonals. The bishop's only as strong as the diagonals that you place it on. Right now, that D5 pawn, doing a beautiful job of blunting it. More piece activity for Hikaru. And again, it comes down to sort of shifting gears, right? Hikaru, from keeping that cagey approach, blocking the center, has gone on the front foot now.
It's always scary, though, to play a knight sort of behind the rook like that, because I'm looking at the retreating squares going, ooh, if b6 gets played for any reason, it looks like there's an opportunity for the rook to escape via c6, but it just feels a little bit offside, and it makes me really uneasy seeing possible moves like that on the board.
Fully agree. These top players, they know when to break the rules, though, when to go for those exceptions. And the white rook, at least on the last turn, was kind of eyeing up an escape route by hitting that black pawn that has just moved, the A pawn there. And if you attack that white rook with a pawn, it has a square to slide forward to. So for now, it's totally fine. But for Hikaru, it's a job of improving his queen, his other rook maybe, as he tries to push the advantage. Board, clock, heart rate, it all feels like it's in Hikaru's favor right now. But still, he needs to turn it into something a bit more tangible.
And also in very tight territory, right? That's barely a little bit over a minute. I mean, one long thing by Hikaru, we'll see the clocks leveling out. But Javakir, he needs to make sure that he's ready with his responses. This last move, A4, is one that we spoke about. And Hikaru on the think here.
I wanted to ask you about that, actually, Tanya, because I feel like there's some long-term pressure against the c7 pawn here, if you're playing the white pieces. And that all makes sense. The black knight also looks really well positioned in f4 for the longer term, but I'm also thinking, cool, but if that's step 1, what's step 2 and 3? Like, I'm trying to visualize what the plan is, what black wants his position to be, and I'm struggling to work out what that longer term plan is for Sindarov.
Well, maybe there's no long-term plan. Maybe there's going to be no time, because that's a short-term move that Hikaru chose, getting that D pawn forward, now coming in with a knight. That pawn could not have been captured because of the knight jumping forward and a fork on the board. This is big pressure and starting to look very scary for black.
Scary for black, but you can start trading stuff off. You can remove that white pawn now that's continued advancing. It's definitely a change of pace from Hikaru. He waited until Sindarov was around to the 3-minute mark, and let's see if it pays off. It does feel like it's a bit scary, but so many knight jumps for both sides, I should mention. This is pure calculation now.
And a flurry of moves coming in. The rook under fire, the bishop attacked as well. Tough decisions for both players to make as they reach blitz territory now. Knight takes pawn. Do you move the rook? Do you do an in-between move by sliding your bishop over and attacking the white queen? Hikaru's head nod, always scary to face.
Scary to face, Hikaru's head nod, but it is sometimes a bluff. I think Hikaru here believes he's doing decently. He knows he's not necessarily winning, but there we go. A hit on the white queen. Brilliant intermezzo there, in-between move from Sindarov, given an exclamation point by our all-seeing engines. And Hikaru doesn't actually have too many great squares for the white queen.
Yeah, I'm taking a look at candidate squares for the queen. I'm going, well, there aren't really many places where I think, actually, this would be better positioned. Like queen d2, for example, potentially runs into stuff with rook c2. Doesn't look that great. Going further forward, I'm not 100% sure that works either. What exactly you're looking at on f3, maybe g4, but I'm feeling a little bit like there aren't that many options.
Yeah, you need to land a blow. Something very concrete, something very direct here with white. Otherwise, the white knights actually don't have so many escape squares, and they can get hit by the black pawns, by the black pieces. White's knights look clumsy. Black's bishop, black's knight, super active in the meantime.
Maybe then you anticipate that and you say, fine, queen g4 so that I don't care about g6. I don't need escape squares if you're the one having to do the escaping.
Yeah. Also lines up some potential checks with the white knights due to the black g7 pawn being pinned. That's the move Hikaru wants to play, but suddenly he's tanked. He's lost most of his time advantage. It's going to become a race to the finish line now.
And queen g4 is sort of the hand move. You play it in 10 seconds. He reaches out the mouse. Well, I want to say the mouse move in this case. I think he's ready, but he hesitates. So unsure about it. What Hikaru's trying to understand is there a follow-up to this devastating-looking move? And perhaps realizing there wasn't an attack to play for, he does put it on a slightly cautious approach. I want to say queen g4 was extremely tempting in that position.
Yeah, and the black rook saves itself. Could maybe have gone more active, but Sindarov plays a very natural move, defending a pawn, defending his 7th rank as well. Hikaru needs to get that black knight out of his grill here. He needs to kick it away somehow, but no real way of doing it without losing a pawn himself. A big threat for black as well, to kick away the white knight from f5.
The only reason that explains why Hikaru chose the f3 instead of the g4 square is that it stops the black knight from coming further into the camp. Knight d3 was prevented by Hikaru with this last move, so taking control of some key squares there. But this is the scary part, right? Hikaru spent so much time coming up with queen f3, and then again took a few seconds before he retreated with that knight, and now he's the one with less time on the clock.
Question mark move, though. That white queen is within forking distance. Watch out, the black knight might later land a check. In the meantime, a retreat from Hikaru forced and a shake of the head. He's not liking his position. He's down 10 seconds suddenly. This is a bullet game. It looks roughly level, at least visually, but Sindarov is the one with the momentum on his side.
It does feel like if you compare this position, superficially to what was 5 moves ago, the white knights in really menacing positions, black not really able to do much about it because the queen could have come up to g4 and stuff like that. And you compare that position 4 or 5 moves ago to what it looks like now, it feels like the thread is being lost just a little bit.
The biggest difference is the 0 to hero piece, and that's the light squared bishop on b3, taking away so many big squares, and Sindarov now improves the position of his queen. Finally, Hikaru kicks out the knight after the h3 pawn was defended, which reroutes itself. David, I have a feeling that Sindarov is feeling ambitious about his chances here.
Sindarov thinks he's doing well. Sindarov wants to win this on the board, maybe even the clock. It's a huge time advantage for black.
And this is getting extremely tense, and you can see it on Hikaru. He is feeling the pressure. His pieces, the lack of coordination, a big threat on the board. There's a fork coming in. Be careful. Watch out, Hikaru Nakamura. He defends it with his king.
But a pawn drops. Sindarov now with the advantage. 1 pawn up. Also 30 seconds up. Hikaru Nakamura needs to put on his speed here. Ooh, the white queen coming in with the check potentially.
The white queen coming in with a check. That's the resource he's relying on for this move that Sindarov had planted. The knight jumping in now. The rook does defend. Hikaru Nakamura, known as the most resourceful player on the planet. He's got to put that cap on right now.
He looks so frustrated a moment ago, Hikaru Nakamura. He keeps glancing up at the clock. Suddenly Sindarov, longest think he's had in a while. And the bar all in black side, pushing the f-pawn forward was apparently a winning move for Sindarov. Instead, trading queens, being a bit more conservative here. But he's still up on time, up that 1 pawn.
And Hikaru just couldn't afford the queen trade. That would end up in a lost endgame. He tries to fight, he tries to keep the calculation going, the complications going. But I'd be scared for that queen, which is now being chased around the board.
Ooh, that white queen almost trapped there as it stood, but resourceful from Hikaru Nakamura. That white knight near the black king now, the black rook a bit loose, everything hanging by a thread for both players. Hikaru jumping around with his knight, threat after threat. This is just going to be decided on the clock. This is blunder territory for both sides.
And it's 30 seconds. It's almost a hyper bullet mode right now. That extra pawn doesn't matter. Look at the control that Hikaru has on the light squares. The queen and knight, a deadly combination. The queen's forced off the board right now. A close to winning ending for black. But does Javakir have enough time?
Yeah, he's turned it around on the clock. Hikaru Nakamura, those few seconds might be worth a pawn here, as black still with the material advantage, but losing control. Knight's jumping. It's going to be checks. Oh, it's anyone's game now. Under 20 seconds for Sindarov.
This is a flagging game. He's got 10 seconds left, and that's it. He gets checkmated. Hikaru Nakamura does the unbelievable.
Out of nowhere, mate on the board. Hikaru Nakamura, from a position that could be described as trying to find some sort of resource, pulls out the ultimate resource. Rook g4, checkmate. And out of nowhere, Hikaru Nakamura takes the win.